Hi, everyone. Welcome to Potluck Food Talks. Today, I have a special guest, my friend Luis. I can make a very personal introduction about Luis. I've known him for over 20 years. So I've seen his complete progress since he started working as a chef until now. He was already an engineer when he started cooking.
Yeah.
Then I visited him working and graduating from the Venezuelan Gastronomic Academy, SEGA. And next thing I know, he's sous chef at Cosme, then chef tournant at Blanca. And now he's running a place in Brooklyn called Ensenada.
Yes.
Which is focused on seafood, cooked in the style of Baja California. And it got featured on the Michelin Guide this year as well. So what's up, Luis?
What's up, guys? How you doing? Thank you for having me here.
So like the main topic of Ensenada, we could say are the aguachiles, right? Or at least a very important feature in the menu.
Yeah, so Ensenada was born this year, beginning of this year. Actually, I started conversation with my partner, Bryce, I would say like September 2021. Just to explain a little bit about the restaurant, my partner, Bryce, he had the space already called Black Flamingo. So he had a vegan taco restaurant upstairs and then a nightclub downstairs. After the pandemic, of course, you know, all the rules changed. Basically, there was no rules. He always had this dream, this idea of like having a coastal Mexican restaurant. And he was looking for a space. And after the pandemic, because that Black Flamingo wasn't doing that great, you know, we met through a mutual friend, Maria, who used to be a bartender there. And he was like, you know what, I'm going to close this shit down. It's not working out. It's not what I want to do. I don't like vegan cuisine anymore. So you want to transform the space and do it here? And like, I mean, I was never honestly planning on opening a Mexican seafood restaurant. That was not in my cards, but I was like, oh, like, you know, I love to do that. This is what I love to do. I love Mexican food. Why not? You know, and then we switched up the concept. We kept the club downstairs. So we still have the club Fridays and Saturdays. And we opened in February of this year. It's been a nice ride. So we call it Latin American seafood, you know, concept, but it's not, I would say it's like 95% Mexican. I would say the aguachiles are the backbone of the menu. It's my favorite part. So you have the aguachiles and everything like stems from that.
Aguachile is a dish I got to know it for the first time, I would say not so long ago, about 6-7 years ago. It's the first time I heard about it. And I remember having one at Hoja Santa in Barcelona. How would you explain it? And how is it different from ceviche, which is perhaps better known worldwide?
Yeah. So, I mean, ceviche, the first time I heard about ceviche was obviously through the Peruvian cuisine, which has a very strong influence in Venezuela, where we grew up and like where I went to culinary school. Like, you know about ceviche since you're a kid, you know, and as a Venezuelan, you obviously know when you hear ceviche, you think about Peru, you know, ceviche is Peruvian, period.
But then it's funny because I would say that there is this own style of ceviche in Venezuela, in Caracas.
Yeah.
For instance, like the ají dulce, which is really characteristic of Venezuelan cuisine, and you won't find that in Peru. You won't make a ceviche without it in Caracas.
That is true. That is very true. What type of pepper do they use in Peru?
Ají amarillo usually, and rocoto, it depends. No, and ají limón. I think that there are like different approaches.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, that's crazy because I always thought, because, you know, that's how I learned to make ceviche. Ceviche was fish, lime juice, red onion, ají dulce, and cilantro.
Exactly, yeah.
I always thought that the Peruvians had ají dulce as well. And I thought, I was like, okay, this is Peruvian. And then you start like doing research, you start traveling, you start seeing other things. You see how they use like the sweet potato. They put the sweet potato in it. There's a version with the hominy corn as well, you know, and the rocoto and the amarillo and all that. So it's interesting. Turns out Mexicans have ceviche as well. And their ceviche is pretty interesting because it's like, the fish is like mad cooked. It's like marinated for days in the lime juice. So it's a fish that is like, I mean, in my opinion, overcooked, you know. Mm-hmm. It's that kind of ceviche that, you know, you would take to the beach with your friends. You like mix like a bunch of fish with lime juice and onions and peppers in a cooler, and then you bring it to the beach. Mm-hmm. And then you eat that for like 3 or 4 days. You know? So the ceviche I make at the restaurant is more towards Peruvian flavors than the Mexican. Me and Bryce went to Ensenada back in May to do some research to it.
Ensenada is a region, a village. Well, what exactly?
It's a city.
It's a city. Okay.
It's about an hour and a half drive south from Tijuana. it's like a road city, you know, like, and it's a big port. To me, it was like a very ugly, a lot of like outlaw kind of vibe, you know, like renegades and all that shit. They go to hide there, strip clubs. They have the 2 bars that they both claim and they invented the margarita. You know, it has like an interesting culture, but the food is like next level. So about the ceviche there, it's interesting because the traditional ceviche in Ensenada, they put the fish in a food processor. So they basically make it almost like a puree of fish. Very, very blended. Put the lime juice and you basically end up with like canned fish texture, like, you know what I mean? And then they spread that on a tostada. That's the ceviche.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Because in Peru, it's quite common, like the leche de tigre, which literally means tiger milk.
Yeah.
The marinade for the ceviche, it's quite common to use like fish broth and this kind of things, pieces of the fish, and mix it with vegetables and lots of lime juice and chili.
Yeah, that's what I do at the restaurant. I do a leche de tigre for the ceviche. We have like a vuelve la vida as well. So yeah, the leche de tigre is basically this is the way I learned it. You incorporate all the elements of the ceviche into a blender, including pieces of fish. You do a fish stock with the bones of the fish. That's your base. And then you blend everything up. And that's your like juice for the ceviche along with the lime juice. The ceviche itself is the pureed fish.
And then you basically add like a sashimi to it.
Not even. No. That's a ceviche.
No, but I mean at Ensenada, you put like pieces of raw fish on top.
Exactly. Yeah. So they're like in Ensenada, at the restaurant, I mix it with raw fish. Exactly. Yeah. Very lightly marinated in lime juice. So it's barely cooked on the outside. I'm not a fan of that super like cooked in citrus fish, you know. I'd rather keep it raw.
That's also something I learned, as you said, many times when you learn ceviche from home cooks, you get to hear this marinated for some hours or this kind of things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And when I went to Peru, like in ceviche bars or even in, let's say, a buffet in a hotel, you will have like a ceviche chef and he will mix it in front of you and serve it to you. So the fish is going to be just a few minutes in the marinade. And that's also the way I like it.
And that's the way they do aguachile in Mexico. You know, aguachile, like you were asking about the difference between aguachile and ceviche. Aguachile, first of all, is very slightly marinated fish. So it's like pretty much raw, as like the Peruvian ceviche. And usually spicier. And then you can do many types of it. As I understand it, aguachile originates in Sinaloa. It's a Sinaloan dish that actually started as it didn't even start as being a seafood dish, because what they used to do, so it's in the Sinaloa mountains. Obviously, they didn't have any fish. What they did was boil meat with chiles. So it's literally water, agua, and chili, you know. So they boil the meat in like this chili broth, basically. And that was the birth of the aguachile. Eventually, when, you know, people started immigrating down to the cities and to the coast, they started incorporating this recipe into seafood, you know. But aguachile is a very like, this is as far as I understand, very humble and, you know, poor people recipe that started out as just like boiled water with chilies. And sometimes I read somewhere that sometimes people didn't even have meat, you know, to put on the dish. So it was literally water with chilies. They have this thing called hueso paseado, where it's just like a bone of meat, and then you pass it to the different dishes to at least get some like of the meat flavor. And then it was just like water, chile, and they ate that with tortillas. That was it.
You mentioned before Vuelve la Vida. I would like to make a zoom on that. Vuelve la Vida is something you get in Venezuela when you go to the beach. And these are usually like street food vendors, and they usually have Vuelve la Vida, Siete Potencias. I don't know if it is the same thing with a different name, but they're like this variation of basically is boiled seafruits like fruto di mare, where there are lots of things they put with like ketchup, Worcestershire sauce, Tabasco, lime juice. I don't know what else. Well, what's your version of it?
So the version I do at the restaurant is the Venezuela one. These little like variations of things is like why we don't dare to like really call it a Mexican place, although that's what we're like labeled as. But, you know, the Vuelva la Vida is one of those hints to Venezuela that I like to keep, because that's what I grew up eating. I learned later. We had it in Ensenada. We used to do it at Cosme. Like there's a Vuelva la Vida in Mexico as well.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
And you can find it in Ensenada in the city. You can find it in any like, you know, those seafood food trucks. In my experience, from what I had or what I tried, is way like, you know how Vuelva la Vida in Venezuela is like a little thick. because it's traditionally made with ketchup. The Mexican version is way more loose. It's more watery. I don't think they use ketchup in general. I think it's more like a Clamato base cocktail. And then they use this, like, a little Valentina, a little Cholula. That's the spice they use for the cocktail versus us using like ketchup as a base. I do Worcestershire, I do lime juice, I do vinegar, a little pureed onion and garlic and cilantro chopped in there.
And what kind of seafoods do you use for the Vuelve la Vida?
So basically our menu is relatively small, but then you can do any aguachile, any ceviche, any Vuelve la Vida. You can do either just fish, you can do either just shrimp, or you can do a campechano, which is a mix of all the seafood that we have available. So you can do a scallop, octopus, fish, and shrimp.
Basically, you build your marinade and your fish, and you build your own combination.
Yeah, exactly. So what is like 3-4 dishes, it ends up being like 20 different dishes that you can play with.
A unique thing about the place is the vibe, because it doesn't feel luxurious at all.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel casual either. So it's like you feel you're like in a well-prepared restaurant, but whatever, the waiter is wearing sneakers.
Yeah.
And that's coherent with a restaurant located in Brooklyn, at least for me. I was with a Basque friend and she wouldn't eat so much spicy. So we had like the less spicy version of it, which was still a little bit spicy. But still, she said she would happily return with her family if she's back in New York. I think could it be scallop or you don't serve scallop? I think I have the memory of scallop in my aguachile.
We do have scallops, yeah. We do have scallops. There's, so we have a scallop tostada that is not traditional at all.
Yeah, exactly. The scallop was in the tostada. Yeah, that was amazing, that one. Yeah.
I do it. Like, so it's a base of labne. Raw scallops are marinated with a sauce that I make with toasted seeds. I call it salsa seca. So it's basically this bunch of seeds that have been fried in olive oil with shallots, garlic, and a little bit of pepper flakes. So I don't know. I think there's some Italian about it. And then just like a little julienne of jicama and green apple on top and some cilantro. That's it.
Where do you get your products from, like in general, like your fish and seafood?
I work with two purveyors that have been working here in New York for years, and they're, like very well known in the industry. One is called Liper & Sons, basically run by this amazing lady called Sherry. I think it's second generation. Her father started the company based in Long Island. They're like Jewish from Long Island, and it's crazy how it's basically like a one-woman operation, because she, no matter where she is, like you see her Instagram and she's in fucking Cancun on vacation and she's taking the orders. Like you text her at midnight and she says thank you and she sends the order the next day. You know what I mean? We get a lot of like fish from Long Island, Montauk, New Jersey. So she's kind of like my local fish purveyor. And then I work with another one called Aquabest. They're based in Chinatown and they're like third generation also. So the kids are running the place now that their grandparents founded in Chinatown. I would say he's more globally oriented. Like he's like, like I go there and check what he has. And he's like, I got a plug in Ensenada. I'm flying there tomorrow. We're trying to get local fish from there. So I'll tell you what we have. So anything you need, we can fly overnight, basically, So what I get with them, I get the octopus from Spain. I get some very, very nice blue shrimp from Southeast Asia, and then he have Japanese stuff and all that. So I play with the both of them, based on what they have. Our idea with the restaurant was to, I think we thought it was going to be more casual than what it became. It was going to be more like Tasca vibes, and you come in and, it's loud and the presentation doesn't necessarily need to be as nice, as perfect. I don't know why, just organically. Or GM, Jen, she also worked with me at Cosme. She's working Michelin star places. So she's got her standard of service is a little higher than we anticipated. We started out with paper napkins, and now we have linen napkins and those kind of things. And we resettle the plates for every course. We were never thinking of having a course style meal. You know what I mean? Based on the reference we had, when we opened the restaurant, we most of the reference we had was Aguachile's places in New York, and we kind of want to do that, but with our twist of flavors and kind of being not oh yeah, we have the, the green and red Aguachile. We want to push it a little bit further, especially when it came to flavor. So it organically became this thing that you experienced, and it was kind of a nice restaurant, but not fancy, and kind of good service, but not uptight. you know?
And another dish that we had that was super fun to eat was like this appetizer that was like tortillas with 8 different sauces.
Yeah.
Like, are these like all Mexican sauces or are there also like twists from other places?
No, those are just like straight up Mexican sauces that I learned with the years, like with my time in Cosme, we like going down to Mexico and eating. I just like looking up books and recipes, you know. So they're very like, I would say like standard, you know, like traditional Mexican sauces. We have the matcha, which the matcha is like it's been, I wouldn't say controversial, but it's been like in everybody's mouths in the past couple of years in New York. Like everybody knows what it is at this point.
What is it exactly?
Salsa matcha. So salsa matcha is a very typical sauce that it consists in dried chilies that are fried in oil and then just processed with any type of nut or seed. So traditionally, it's like the one I've seen the most is made with peanuts, and then you usually have a smoky chili in the mix. So it's either morita or pasilla mije or chipotle. You know, it's got some smokiness to it, but then there's like 1,000 different ways that you can go about it. You know, you can do any type of nut. You can do almonds, you can do peanuts, you can do walnuts. I remember there was one of my friends from Cosme, Milton. He's a sous chef there now. He started like a matcha business during the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
It was called tomatchanyc.com. And it was, I mean, I tried a couple of those and they were pretty good. And he would like do a new recipe every week. So he would come up with like sunflower seed matcha this week. We have a pine nut one.
This was the one with pumpkin seeds in your version?
Oh no, that's the sickle pack. So that one is like a Mayan recipe that is basically more like a dip. Has sickle pack is like Mayan for, I don't remember what it stands for, but it's like tomato and pumpkin seed basically. So it's basically like a dip, like a spicy dip. That's one of my favorite sauces.
Yeah, I remember that one. And the other one that I remember that was addictive was pineapple butter that came with the fish al pastor. The fish was cut like in a butterfly and then brushed with an adobo, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah,
roasted, and then some vegetables on top and the pineapple butter.
Yeah, that pineapple butter, the man, that's it. Like everybody loves that. Like everybody like leaves the restaurant talking about it because it's just so good. That's a recipe that I stole from Cosme, straight up. I can take credit for that.
Yeah, I think that's a classic from Herrera, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah. I think he had it at Pujol. He used to do like a tataki, so like a barely seared fish. So actually, like that's the first time I saw a pastor recipe not being applied to pork. Mm-hmm. Like he was the first one I saw him doing it. And then we did a version at Cosme when I started there back in 2014. In the opening menu, it was a cobia, tataki al pastor. And then it came with this like pineapple puree and just like these baby pineapple slices on top and then tortillas on the side. So basically the Brancino is my kind of like my ode to that, you know, like seafood restaurant, Mexican, you got to have some fish al pastor, you know, and then like everybody does it now. Like I remember there's a restaurant here called Taqueria Ramirez, which is pretty good. It's like one of the, I would say probably the only taqueria that I know in New York that actually does like Mexico City style, you know, with the choricera, they throw everything in, they cook everything in the lard and then just like put in the taco. That's it. But they did a pop-up a few months ago and they did a monkfish al pastor and they made a trompo with monkfish pieces, rub al pastor with the pineapple on top, which was very interesting. So there's people doing creative stuff, you know, there's people like switching it up.
Yeah, another dish I wanted to ask you about, and I couldn't have that one. I already ate too much at that point. Was the soft shell crab. What can you say about that dish?
Oh yeah, that's gone now because that's soft shell crab. It's in the summer. It's in every restaurant in New York. That's one of those like staple like East Coast thing that like, I mean, it's so good that it's hard to not put it on the menu. And there's like a million variations. People usually fry it. That's the one I've seen the most here in New York. So basically the season, I would say it's like mid-July till mid-September. It's really a short season. It's when it's warmer. It's when the crabs go out of the water and they start like changing the shell. So at that exact time is when they catch it. And, you know, it's like member-like texture. You touch the shell and it's like soft, like jelly.
Yeah, like a cartilage, something like that, right?
Yeah. So like kind of like chewy, but like kind of crunchy also, depends on how you cook it. So you can eat the whole fucking crab.
Amazing.
You know, summer is a very interesting season for restaurants in New York because you have everything available. You have the best tomatoes, you have the best seafood. So I did a version. It was crazy because I was trying to do a Thai papaya salad version with soft shell crab. I mean, Thai food here is big and it's one of my favorite foods to eat when I go out in New York. There's so many good places. It was actually, I did that dish by accident, honestly, because I was like trying to do a papaya salad with soft shell crab, which I didn't want to fry. We were doing it like butter based on a pan, which I think it like preserved the crab flavor way better. You still get that like chewy, but like also crunchy texture of the crab, And I remember the papayas that they came in and they weren't green enough. They were like kind of ripe. And I was like, damn, I'm not going to be able to pull this up. And one of my prep books was like, why don't you use melon? We have a shit ton of melon downstairs. And I grabbed like a honeydew melon and I shaped it like in the same way you would do a green papaya for a Thai salad. And, it became this like sweet and sour and like salty dish that worked really well with the brightiness of the crab. So it became being like a melon salad.
Yeah, I think melon works super well and savory.
Yes.
It's like a cucumber and the sweetness is like the one you want in a super sweet tomato.
Exactly.
So if you add salt and let's say olive oil or whatever, it works super well.
It was one of those like crazy good accidents that happened in the kitchen. And honestly, that dish was like created by mistake. And then what I did was like all the like the trimmings of the crab, I made a broth and I did kind of like a dashi. So that was like the base for the dish. And then just like you would do a papaya salad, you would toast the melon with some fish sauce, sesame oil, lime juice, lots of serrano peppers, crushed peanuts, cilantro, onions. And then I would finish it with some like light blister salvo tomatoes, which that's another thing that you can only find here for like a month. For those who don't know, salvo tomatoes is like this little like cherry tomato that's yellow that I haven't seen anywhere else but like Northeast Coast, in the United States. And it's my favorite tomato ever. It's like the sweetest tomato you could ever try. So people go crazy about that during the summer as well. Like people do dishes that are just like songo tomatoes, Songo tomatoes everywhere. Songo tomato pizza. You see it everywhere in the summer.
One last topic I wanted to talk about with you is what we were talking just before the interview. Like, how has been the reception from the public? You being Venezuelan and cooking Mexican cuisine, how do people perceive it? Are there any critics? How do you respond to them in general?
I think that subject here in New York, being the melting pot that it is not really an issue. People don't really care as long as the food is good and, like you're like presenting a culture with respect. Like me being Latin American, I somehow, feel identified with like, we went through like a very similar shit, with all the colonization and all that. And I think I have a lot of respect for Mexican culture in a sense that I'm almost like envious of how well they were able to preserve the pre-Hispanic culture, like gastronomically speaking, but like generally speaking, they were able to like, I don't know if there was like more documentation before the fucking Spaniards came or what was it, but like, you don't really see that in Venezuela. Like you don't really see when you try like Venezuelan food or Colombian or like, like I would say like South American food in general, like except for Peruvian, maybe like it's way more influenced by Hispanic culture than Mexican. I mean, you obviously see the ingredients and olives and like you have like fish a la veracruzana, which is basically like a clash of the two cultures, but like they pretty much cooking how they were cooking before the Spaniards came, that's very admirable.
What's this dish you just mentioned? This fish a la veracruzana? Well,
fish a la veracruzana is basically like a, like bacalao and tomate.
Yeah.
Like it's that. It's basically that.
Yeah, like the Vizcaína sauce, something like that.
Exactly. It's exactly like that. So for me, like, I always put as an example that's one of the few Mexican dishes that like you can really see the Hispanic influence in their food,
Yeah, for instance, for me, it's crazy, and it's something I mention a lot, is the Venezuelan hallaca, which is the Christmas dish, is basically a tamal with a stew that can be pork or some other meats. But this stew usually has red wine and raisins and olives, which are like super Eurocentric ingredients.
Yeah.
And I think it would be really interesting to make versions of that dish that are decolonized, like you can pickle some... let's say almonds or whatever produce you can find in Venezuela and and get a very similar taste than the ones from olives. You know, you can replicate this kind of flavors without having to import them every time, which could be interesting.
Try to do like a pre-Hispanic hallaca.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are also all these myths around the hallaca and many other dishes, like how they were created, and most of them are probably invented.
Yeah. I mean, if you do that, then you have a tamal.
Yeah, basically.
When I went to culinary school with our founder, Jose Rafael Novera, rest in peace, we would have this conversation. Like, you know, there was these two theories about hallaca where, you know, the main one that, and it's like, I think it's the most popular one, was that it was created by slaves with leftover product from like what their owners would cook. So then they would take like all this like leftover meat and these olives here and there, and they've made the hallaca. And they say it was like a slave dish, but like then you think about all the, I mean, like, you know, Mexicans were doing tamales since like before the fucking times. So
also the other thing about the hallacas is that the package is with plantain leaves, and those came from Africa. And then you have the stew that is very Spanish, and the tamales, which are Native American.
But you know, Mexicans do. I'm not sure if they did it from before Spaniards came, but Mexicans do tamales wrapped in plantain leaf as well.
Uh-huh.
There's two versions. There's the corn husk one, and then there's this plantain leaf one.
Yeah, which makes perfect sense. Yeah, and that's also a clash of cultures, you know, knowing that the plantains came from Africa.
Yeah. They use a lot of plantains too. But I mean, going back to your question about me, you know, not being Mexican, I mean, I've gotten a couple of comments, like I've got a like Mexican, and it's from friends usually, like people, Mexican friends coming in, and then they're asking like, who here is from Ensenada? Like, what do you call it Ensenada? And I was like, well, like Ensenada, first of all, like it means literally like an inlet of water, like an Ensenada. Like it's not even the city. That's where the city is called Ensenada, you know? And second of all, like we said, like I've seen like a couple of reviews too that says like food is good, but it doesn't feel authentic, you know? Which is like, I'm sure it's probably not like a Mexican person. Like I've had better food in Mexico City, you know? And the fact is like, I'm not trying to necessarily make it authentic. I'm trying to make it as respectful as possible to the culture, to the ingredients. You know, we're in a time in New York where like you can find like any Mexican ingredient you want. So that makes it easier to do as opposed to Venezuelan food, for example, that like finding some ingredients to like Venezuelan food is sometimes a struggle in terms of finding the products. So that makes things easier. But, you know, I've also like made it a point to like not necessarily be 100% traditional. I like come up with my own aguachile, and like we have an aguachile amarillo in the menu, which is like ají amarillo base, for example, and I use turmeric and ginger and lemongrass, you know. So that's not traditional at all, but it's interesting to like play with those flavors.
Your chefs are from all over Latin America, right?
Yeah, my chef is Mexican. He's on his way out. I hired a new chef now that's Ecuadorian, but grew up in LA. You know, so that's part of like what it is. But yeah, like I was saying, like here in New York, I don't think they crucify you for that because everybody's doing like there's two Mexican restaurants. There's 3 Mexican restaurants that have 1 Michelin star in New York. 2 of them, the chefs are American. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I feel like I could open a Japanese restaurant if I wanted to, you know, like I don't feel that there should be these boundaries as long as you're respectful with what you're doing and you're honoring the culture that you're offering, you know?
Yeah, that's all it takes. And I mean, I'm not really cooking Venezuelan food at this moment. I'm not saying that I'm never going to cook Venezuelan food again. But right now, I'm like very invested in learning more about Mexican culture, Mexican food, traveling there every year, eating, you know, talking to people that are like trying to like import products here. You know, we have a very good relationship with the people that gives us the masa. We get masa fresh every day from our friends at this restaurant called For All Things Good. They have a very good masa program. We get our tostadas from this other Mexican place called Sobre Masa. There's a couple that I met that have a company called Tamoa. They're doing also like heirloom corn, importing it from Mexico, and a lot of types of beans, a lot of types of chilies, you know? So for me, that's like what it's all about. It's like having that relationship and just like moving like Latin American culture further. Like I would say it's bigger than just saying Mexican or just saying Venezuelan or just saying Colombian, you know? Like here in New York, there's like room for so much still, you know, that I don't think people are worried about all these Venezuelans doing Mexican food now.
That's it for this week's episode of Potluck Food Talks. If you like what we're doing, make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok as Potluck Food Talks. The show airs every Monday.